Hi, it's Bethany. I'm a lower elementary Montessori teacher, and I gave a live talk on July 27th, 2024, all about my scope and sequence and how I see the scope and sequence of lower elementary Montessori. Here is a video from the recording.
Here is going to be the special guest speaker. It's somebody who has been teaching Montessori for a bunch of years, like 30 plus years. He was my first through fifth grade teacher, as well as my dad. And the reason why I do Montessori now, and he has great ideas for follow-up activities and other extensions to works. So that's who you're going to be hearing about. His name is Mr. Stan. And so here we go. We will change positions.
Okay, thanks, Bethany, and welcome to the part where we talk about extensions. I know for a lot of Montessori teachers, it's always interesting to try and develop ideas. Now, I don't have an extensive thing here, but we're just kind of giving examples of in certain areas. But some things to keep in mind, and that is to be open to ideas. That means as you're researching ideas, and using those ideas plus talking with your students. So if they, as these ideas can be used after work as an alternative or to help redirect students. And those two things kind of go together in the sense that if you have students that, may not have a good start to the day, might just not feel motivated to do what's either on the work plan or the maps by the show. But I can't imagine that because they give you a step-by-step situation. But I know in working with students that sometimes they can go through periods or they can go through things where maybe they don't want to work with that work plan. Maybe, for that day, they might have an idea and they come in and they think, oh, I really want to do this. And as I think of this year, there was a student that, they have a thing where the first year parents come in to view the students, and she really wanted to do this PowerPoint for her when her parent came in. So she started this a little time before and then kind of worked on it. And she just had this idea that she wanted to do. She had seen older students doing kind of things like that. And then she wanted to do that. And then she ended up being able to share it with her mom. So these are kind of things. And also, if you notice in your classroom that there is some, students are off task, they need to reset, you go, you talk to students, say, hey, asking questions. Is there something I can help you with? Is there an idea that you have in mind? And sometimes that helps. And then they actually sometimes and very often will do the work and then kind of get back into the rhythm of what they're trying to do. So that's what we're kind of talking about here. And so it's really in two things that are probably more individual and things that are probably better that I've used within a group setting, because I do feel it's important, even though that's not really stressed in Montessori, because, to do this kind of group activity necessarily, or to do things together in that way to make sure they have enough time to do things on their own. But I do feel it's important, at least with the students I've worked with. And you also find leadership skills develop that way. So let's look at the next slide here. I got, oops, that's kind of different, but okay. It's out of sequence. That's okay.
Oh, are you sure?
That's all right, because, okay.
Or no?
That's right. Just go. That's okay. Because Bethany had mentioned comics and picture books. So the only one to mention that is a very good one to have the students do. And if you and because it deals with these ideas of sequencing, beginning, middle, and end. And this year I had two students working together, and they made a series of picture books. And for the most part, most of the time they finished their work. But they wanted to get together, and it was a story about rock musicians for some reason that went through a variety of adventures, and they made a sequence, and then they put it out for other students to see, and it's very nice for students to see that. And students have done that with comics. And it's great to start with, and I'm just putting that, it's great to start with 3 panels. You can find free comic book pages on other on websites. You just type in on Google. Also, I like to fold a large sheet, especially for the younger students, or into threes, or even 8.5 by 11 works, because a lot for younger students, they don't necessarily want to color or draw in as much. So, but you got to remember, there's a lot of skills and thought that go into doing those activities. There is not necessarily Montessori land, but in regular education research, there is stuff that saying the benefits of making comics and things like that. And there's also, of course, lots of benefits with making picture books as well. All right. So the extension, this is just a picture example of a poster in zoology. This now, you can find parts of the caterpillar. Certainly, when I started, you didn't find necessarily parts of the caterpillar in 3-part cards. You can now. But instead of doing that, I just had the students ask them the option. In this case, I think we actually ended up doing it as for a group, but some students did I think they did drawings, and then they had the option of doing this poster. So I gave them the option. And so, they trace a circle using the geometry cabinet circles and being able to do that. And I did make an example for this so that they could see that. And the older students, of course, would look at, the parts of a, page or something. Now, what I did in this case is because they cut out these circles out of the paper, and I had noticed that a lot of the circles, they cut out, so they just made another piece of art from that circles. So the space that was left over, so they used to make, a piece of artwork from there as well. All right. So, and that can be, that's a good one to have, even on the shelf, I think, because we get butterflies. So it makes real sense in that case. They're seeing the caterpillars and things of that nature. So, you kind of spend a little bit more time. I'll spend a little bit more time with the caterpillars and the butterflies, but, that's always a great one. And butterflies are a really good one to have in the classroom, and they're easy. So whether you're homeschooling, whether you're doing any kind of thing, if you get even one cup in your classroom, during the time when the company sells that, it's really worth to do. Okay, this one deals with gravity after the Great Lesson. So, they deal with forces in the Great Lesson. Of course, there are some experiments, and this one is probably a fairly familiar one, but students just kind of worked on this. I got a bunch of index cards. It was a simple tower thing. So I like to do towers with gravity, and you can also certainly do that with cups and other things too as well. But I had some index cards we use for other things later on. But I think the students really enjoy doing that one. Okay, so this is the parts of the mountain that I did this year. We had, so this is an origami mountain. You can go on YouTube and find how to make this. Very easy. If you do it a couple times, you'll get it. The students also, for the most part, most of the students, some may need help, but some generally will be able to do it on your own. And then I did type out the parts of the mountain, and then they could cut them, and then they could paste them on there. So they could, kind of, instead of doing the 3 parts, again, you're giving me a choice, even within the concept saying, well, you got, the 3-part cards of what you need to do, but to learn, but this gives them some alternative, as an alternative choice to just doing the 3-part cards for those students, again, that may have worked on it prior, or maybe are this just kind of motivating these other students doing it. So it is a nice option. And then this one with the, I don't think I have a specific picture on this one, but this one is just the geometry is making sure that, it's great to have clay and Play-Doh around for students that also are very tactile, and they, because some students just kind of like that idea. Developing the shapes takes good motor skills. So that's always a good one. And it's good for all the levels, because younger students sometimes have a harder time making all of the shapes, certainly. Then I know students, this, fairly common one is like taking the 3D shapes out of paper. So they're called nets. You can find those for free as well online, print them out. The kids can make them, or they can, just kind of figure it out. They can actually, to make a cube, you could actually use the square in the geometry cabinet, trace them, put them next to each other, cut them out, leave a little space, little tab, and they could actually do that from the geometry cabinet from that way. right? So those are good. And then, drawing the shapes. When students are done, sometimes they're looking for art activities or something, and we're talking, and I'll say, well, would you like to do a drawing project? Because I call some things projects, so that they start off maybe doing one thing, and then it kind of, we might add some things to that to kind of give them options as to a project, but even to draw the 3D shapes. And then you can say, okay, would you like to try and do it with the shadow? So you can, if you're talking about, especially if you're going through the solar energy chart, or you're doing, the solar system, and then you're talking about light, right? Then you could get a flashlight, shine it, and the students can see how that shadow um, goes to different places. Then they can practice drawing not only the shape, but knowing where the shadows are, and they can also look on the shape and see if they can see the differences where the light is on the shape as well. So you can, flesh out the 3D figure that way. So that's, again, it's more of an art. But when you think about doing these kind of projects, a lot of the geometry, and that's what's great about the Montessori thing, they can be integrated into follow-up works, as I see it. And sometimes the follow-up work might not necessarily be about one specific thing. Like in this case, you're bringing that science element of light, so and shadow. Okay, so keep that in mind. And then the fraction materials, again, I don't have a picture of, but you can, I've had students make some really neat animals. Sometimes they need to be shown examples. A turtle's a great one to make out of the fraction materials. I do still have them write the name of the fraction on each part, but they can do that and make some pretty neat characters. But also those characters, I've had students make characters in there where they wrote comics or stories about the characters that they created with the fraction pieces. So that's another kind of follow-up, I think, that gets the kids focused at times. And it's having ideas also for the novelty end of it too, because if something new, that's what they say, the brain people say, the brain likes new things. And that's why that's why when you take the training stuff, they give you some ideas, but as you go on, you'll find that you really need to have more ideas, especially if students are trying to be independent, and that's helping them with their independence, discussing their ideas, and trying to help them in that way. Okay, so I just put that. So this is the group. These are more group activities. These are based on themes oftentimes. And I mentioned before, you really see this develop leadership and students working together. I think Bethany mentioned about what she does for her winter play and things of that nature. And those are great things. You see students kind of come out, if they're a little shy, or they're hesitant, you see and also if you do it on a regular, and a year basis, it does help. You can notice that the development. Okay, this first one is something we do all together because it deals with the parts of the earth. I know it doesn't look like that, but this is years ago I saw a article in a regular teachers magazine. They talked about the parts. So you start out with a malted milk ball for the inner and outer core. Sometimes I've tried to look at the thicker ones. So there are some malt balls with thicker, inner and outer, like outer core. And then the ice cream is the mantle, right? And then the hard chocolate shell is the crust. And then what I added, that wasn't part of the article. What I added was, I thought, well, what do we do for atmosphere? And then came the whipped cream. So that was what I kind of added on to those ideas. And students, really, of course, love this one. So, and then it also is a different way that, and students have a tendency to remember in those things. This one, this again, you would need these kind of magnet tiles, but this is an example of if we're talking about magnets, and we did, and so I had enough magnet tiles where we could get into groups, and they had to come make some decisions. They had to plan some things out of what kind of living space. And then they had the options of writing stories about what would be in there. One student made like a stadium, the same group that made those books about Rockstar. They want to make, they made a auditorium type complex out of them. And then this was just kind of a standard living dwelling, but And then this is actually a picture from Bethany's room, but we've done this too as well. Having students do mini golf. Now with the mini golf, if you have construction paper and you can make a pretty good club, and then you can use some foam balls or ping pong balls or whatever to make the balls. But a lot of times I like to do a theme out of it, and then the students can research things and decide that you can have small groups, again, working on one particular hole. And again, that involves some of some science element things as well that you can talk about too. So, don't discount some of these things from that standpoint. Now, this one goes along. I don't have specific shots of the shadow pups the kids made because they're, but I'll do a shadow puppet group work activity. And I've done that the last couple of years and actually longer than that, but I'm just thinking, I've done it consistently the last couple of years. And the students really, of course, enjoy it. And they can write, in many cases, they can write their own show, like a group can write their own show, or I also offer them the option of things that are already made if they're about a specific, like a tall tale, or like I have like a readers theater thing that they can do. I also do the readers theater as well, where there's things we can do for settings and dress up. I know that's not specifically a reader theater, it kind of actually borders more into the plays. But again, if you're doing things with, this goes back, if you're doing solar energy or you're doing things about light and shadows, this really fits right into that. And again, it deals with all, the elements of performing, but also reading. If I'm doing this, I'll do this instead of just like using the reading program they want them to use. And we'll take a little break from that and we'll get into this so they can learn their lines, be confident with it, and do that.
Project you did, you trace their heads.
Oh,
The shadows. You trace them.
oh, we did the outline. Yeah, we did that too. Silhouettes. We did some silhouettes of students too, where we kind of trace their heads using lights and things like that. Now, in this case, I do have a bigger light thing. I've done shadow puppets with flashlights, but what doesn't work now are the newer flashlights with the one of those, I can't think of the name of the bulbs right now, but you have to really look for kind of the older bulbs to make, or you have to, or like the only problem is if you get a one that's like it has a circle and a light bulb in it, like one for these we used to use for baby chicks, those get hot. So that's why this light source works, and it's a nice one to have. And again, there's a little investment in terms of, what you're going to do with some of these things. I was going to show some puppets because again, I like puppets. I've had students create a puppet show in the classroom, either in a group wise or in a small group, or even individually, or they took on that as a project. And that's pretty good. The other thing I did was when it was on sale, there was this foam. Now this is the puppet, but what we did was we painted it rock color. So the students picked a rock, when we talked about a rock cycle, and they painted around the colors, the layers, especially if it's, one of the sedimentary rocks or something like that, where you've got some layers. And then what they did was they research it, find out, and then they tell the rest of the group what kind of rock they were. And there's a lot of you could guess the rocks. They could, do some different things with it. Okay. So while we're talking about puppets, I just kind of thought about that short time ago. But so puppets are a great thing to have on even on an art shelf, where you can do like finger puppets. I've had bag puppets, of course, are really popular. I think the thing about bag puppets is they like the students do like to have things that where, especially younger kids, they have things already formed. So drawing out, if you're good, drawing out. I made one when we had like some of the visiting kindergartners, and I did some like a sea turtle, and they added on the head and the back, and so there's some things that students like to have available that way, because a lot of times on Montessori, they'll just put out the materials and say, okay, you pick and choose, which is great. But sometimes they also need to have a little guidance in terms of, like if you're going to say, okay, like on part of the shelf, I'm going to do a drawing project. Part of it, what I would do puppets. Part of it, could be painting. Part of it could be, using clay or Play-Doh, on the different shelves. Then you might have an example of that. All right. But in any case, going back with just the puppets, there's a lot of different options there. Puppets go well too with the timeline of life and things like that. as well, I think. Okay. Okay. So I just put this in as the science of sound because we did this year. We talked about sound, but we also did kazoos. They made rhythm instruments. So that works out real well as a group because they're working on some rhythm stuff, doing it together. And then, doing a simple thing like the Farmer in the Dell, or even what's the Beethoven one that's real simple. There's a real simple Beethoven one, has a real simple melody that could be done as well. And I also had someone that played violin, so I said, okay, can you play this melody? And then when there was a student that played piano, so he just had the school had a small keyboard available, and they kind of played along together with that. And we had some other instruments too, but they also made rain sticks so that they could turn it and shake it and do some things, and just some nice activity. I mean, I see these as kind of like celebration type things too, that you may not do all the time, but you might want to do as group activities once in a while to kind of break up. I just find that when you go through, it kind of breaks up things, and also kind of re-energizes kids to a certain extent, in the sense of just refocusing on things, going back to having a little break between the day-to-day thing of making choices. And because again, it can be a lot for kids to fatigue. Kids get fatigued with writing, with reading, but also with making decisions. And even I've even read even adults, when you have a lot of choice, that gets kind of fatiguing. So the thing is that when you look at it from that standpoint, that you're trying to help coach children, you're trying to help teach and manage, and so you have to have those activities and things like that available in your own mind, so that if there are students that are really having a hard time, you can try and reach out to them, offer them options, and see if there can be production where there might be more production and distraction. So that's what you want to look at in that. And I think that's everything. So, all right. So I hope you enjoyed that. Thanks, Bethany, for having me here. And I hope you guys had I think throughout the day, there's been a lot of good ideas, and hopefully that you can find some things that you might be able to use.
Thank you for watching. Go ahead and click the link below if you would like to see more information about my scope and sequence and maps, my free hub of Montessori resources, and my Montessori activities, which also has Montessori resources for your classroom. Thank you.